He was rehearsing for the comeback of his life. The next morning, he was gone. She was booked for a Grammy party. Hours later, paramedics pulled her from a hotel bathtub. These happened to the stars themselves. Albert Decker's bizarre death. He wasn't a household name, but movie fans knew his face. He played villains in classics like Dr. Cyclops and appeared in The Wild Bunch just before his death. By 1968, Decker had worked in Hollywood for 3 decades. Off-screen, he was also a politician, once serving as a California state assemblyman. On paper, his life looked steady. What happened in his final days tells a very different story. In May 1968, Decker's fiancée, fashion photographer Geraldine Saunders, grew worried. She hadn't heard from him in days. She went to his Hollywood apartment and unlocked the door. What she found was so strange that newspapers struggled with how to print the details. Decker was dead in the bathroom. He was naked, kneeling in the tub. Around his neck was a noose that had been tied to the shower curtain rod. Handcuffs locked his wrists. There were chains on his ankles. Even more shocking, his entire body had been marked with red lipstick and felt-tip pen. Phrases covered his chest, stomach, and thighs. Some of the words were obscene, others were racial slurs, and some looked like random phrases. There was no forced entry, and nothing was stolen. Detectives ruled out homicide. The Los Angeles County coroner, Dr. Theodore Curfey, signed the death certificate as accidental. The official cause: asphyxiation due to autoerotic accident. But that explanation never sat right with everyone. Friends described Decker as private and quiet, not the kind of man to set up something so elaborate. His fiancée insisted he would never humiliate himself that way. Still, without evidence of foul play, the case was closed. Decker's death was overshadowed by The Wild Bunch, released just a year later. In the film, he plays Harrigan, the railroad detective who tries to hunt down the outlaws. Many viewers never knew that by the time they saw him on screen, he was already gone. He was 62 years old. His career spanned stage, film, and politics, yet his name is now tied to one of Hollywood's strangest death scenes: Inger Stevens' sudden death. She was blonde, talented, and one of the busiest actresses in Hollywood during the 1960s. Viewers knew her best from the hit TV show The Farmer's Daughter, where she played a young woman working in politics. She also starred in films like Hang 'em High with Clint Eastwood and A Guide for the Married Man with Walter Matthau. Her screen image was warm, but her personal life was full of struggles that the public never saw. By April 1970, Stevens had been working nonstop. On the night of the 29th of April, she was at her Hollywood Hills home with a friend, singer Lola McNally. According to police reports, McNally found Stevens lying unconscious on the kitchen floor in the early morning hours. Paramedics rushed to the scene. They tried to revive her, but she was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. She was only 35 years old. The coroner determined that she died from acute barbiturate poisoning caused by an overdose of sleeping pills. The ruling was listed as suicide. News of her death stunned Hollywood because she seemed to be in the middle of a successful career. Just the day before, she had met with producers about new projects. Stevens' story became even more complicated when her personal life came under the spotlight. For years, she had carefully hidden her private relationships. After her death, actor Ike Jones revealed that he and Stevens had secretly married in 1961. Jones was African American, and at the time, interracial marriage was still highly controversial in Hollywood. The couple kept it private to protect her career, which showed how much pressure she was under to maintain a certain public image. Colleagues spoke warmly of Stevens after her passing. Clint Eastwood called her a very fine actress with a lot of potential. Fans wrote letters to newspapers, expressing shock that someone so bright on screen could be suffering so deeply. Her final role, in the film A Dream of Kings, was released later that same year. Watching it, audiences couldn't have guessed that they were seeing her for the last time. Inger Stevens' sudden death remains one of Hollywood's most tragic shocks. She was young, talented, and at the height of her career, yet her life ended in silence on a kitchen floor in Los Angeles. Elvis Presley's Vegas collapse. He had been called the king of rock and roll since the 1950s. By the mid-1970s, fans still filled stadiums and Las Vegas showrooms to see him perform. But behind the jumpsuits and rhinestones, Elvis was a very different man. His health was collapsing under the strain of prescription drug abuse, poor diet, and a grueling tour schedule. In 1974, his Vegas shows became infamous for reasons no performer wanted. One night at the Hilton Hotel, Elvis stumbled through songs, slurred his speech, and rambled between numbers. Instead of the sharp, charismatic star from his early years, the audience saw a bloated and exhausted man who could barely keep up with his own band. Reports from the time described fans looking shocked. Some walked out, unable to watch their idol fall apart in front of them. Others stayed, hoping he might pull it together. He did not. At one point, he forgot entire lyrics to his hits. Newspapers later ran headlines that Elvis was a shadow of his former self. Doctors who later examined him revealed that he was heavily dependent on painkillers, sedatives, and amphetamines. His body weight had also ballooned, making it harder for him to breathe and perform. Close friends said that while he insisted on touring, his health simply could not keep up with the demands. The Vegas collapse wasn't a single isolated event. It happened more than once during this period, with shows ranging from erratic to disastrous. Still, he refused to cancel many dates, often telling friends he didn't want to disappoint his fans. Behind the scenes, Elvis's staff tried to manage the problem by giving him medication to keep him awake before shows, and then more medication to make him sleep afterward. The cycle only deepened his physical decline. Looking at the footage from these concerts today, it's striking to see how far he had fallen from the man who once shocked America on The Ed Sullivan Show. His charisma was still there, but buried under exhaustion and addiction. John Belushi's fatal night. He was comedy's wild child. He exploded onto Saturday Night Live in the mid-1970s, becoming one of the show's first breakout stars. He was brash, fearless, and unpredictable, known for sketches like the samurai character and the cheeseburger diner bit. Hollywood followed quickly. Animal House turned him into a movie star, and the Blues Brothers proved he could headline films and albums at the same time. By the early 80s, Belushi was everywhere and burning out fast. Behind the laughs, Belushi had a dangerous drug habit. Friends and colleagues later admitted he was using cocaine heavily and mixing it with other substances. He lived life at full speed, refusing to slow down. In early 1982, he checked into the Chateau Marmont, a famous Hollywood hotel that doubled as a celebrity hideout. It was here that his final night unfolded. On the 5th of March, 1982, Belushi was visited by friends, including actor Robert De Niro and comedian Robin Williams, who stopped by his bungalow. They left before midnight. Hours later, his assistant found him lifeless on the bed. He was only 33 years old. The coroner's report confirmed he died from a speedball, a mix of heroin and cocaine. News of his death spread instantly. For fans, it was shocking not only because of his age, but also because Belushi had seemed unstoppable. He was the kind of performer who filled every room he entered with energy. To think that energy was gone overnight felt unthinkable. The aftermath was messy. A woman named Kathy Smith, who had been with Belushi that night, later admitted to injecting him with the fatal dose. She was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served time in prison. The details only deepened the tragedy. Belushi's funeral drew big names from Hollywood and music. His close friend Dan Aykroyd, riding his motorcycle, led the procession. For fans, it felt like the end of an era. The comedy world had lost one of its boldest, most original voices. River Phoenix outside the Viper Room. At 23, he had a career most people only dream about. But in the early 1990s, he was also slipping into the drug culture that followed young stars. River Phoenix was supposed to be Hollywood's next great leading man. He had already earned an Academy Award nomination for Running on Empty, starred in Stand By Me, and built a reputation as a sensitive actor with real depth. On the night of the 30th of October, 1993, Phoenix arrived at the Viper Room, a Los Angeles nightclub partly owned by Johnny Depp. He came with his girlfriend, actress Samantha Mathis, his brother Joaquin, and his sister Rain. Inside, he mingled with friends and even jammed on stage for a short set. Witnesses later said he looked unsteady. By midnight, things took a darker turn. Outside on the sidewalk, River collapsed. His siblings tried to help as chaos broke out on the crowded street. Joaquin Phoenix, only 19 at the time, called 911 in a frantic voice that would later be played on news broadcasts. Paramedics arrived and rushed River to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but doctors couldn't revive him. He was pronounced dead in the early hours of the 31st of October. The coroner reported that Phoenix died from acute multiple drug intoxication after using a lethal mix of heroin and cocaine. For fans, the news was crushing. He had been seen as a clean-living, eco-friendly actor who campaigned for animal rights and stayed away from Hollywood's darker corners. The reality behind the image was far more complicated. Public reaction was immediate. Outside the Viper Room, fans left flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. The club itself became a morbid landmark overnight. Johnny Depp closed the venue temporarily out of respect. News outlets replayed the details of that chaotic night again and again. River's death forced the industry to confront how easily young stars could fall into danger. He had been cast in major upcoming projects, including a lead role in Interview with the Vampire. Those parts were recast, and Hollywood lost the actor who was once expected to define a generation. Michael Jackson's final rehearsals. This Is It was set to open in London in July 2009, with 50 sold-out shows at the O2 Arena. Fans across the world were waiting to see if the King of Pop could reclaim his throne. In the final weeks of June, rehearsals were held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Those who worked with him described a mix of brilliance and fragility. Footage later released in the This Is It documentary showed Jackson dancing with precision, hitting cues, and running through numbers like Billie Jean and Man in the Mirror. He was thinner than usual, but on stage, he still had the spark that made him famous. On the 24th of June, 2009, Jackson performed what would be his final rehearsal. Crew members remembered him smiling and thanking his team. Kenny Ortega, the tour's director, said he looked energized and optimistic. Hours later, that optimism would disappear. The next morning, the 25th of June, Jackson was found unresponsive at his rented mansion on North Carrollwood Drive. His personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, tried to revive him before paramedics arrived. At 2:26 p.m., Jackson was pronounced dead at UCLA Medical Center. He was 50 years old. The coroner ruled his death a homicide caused by acute propofol intoxication. Propofol is a powerful anesthetic, normally used in hospitals, not in bedrooms. Investigators found that Dr. Murray had been giving Jackson nightly doses to help him sleep. In 2011, Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to prison. The public reaction was immediate and massive. News of Jackson's death crashed websites and jammed phone lines. Vigils broke out in Los Angeles, New York, Tokyo, and cities around the world. Sales of his albums skyrocketed overnight, and radio stations played his music on repeat. For many, the This Is It rehearsal footage became haunting to watch. It showed Jackson doing what he loved just hours before his sudden collapse. Fans saw a performer still capable of magic, even while his private battles with insomnia and medication dependency remained hidden. Jackson's comeback never happened. Instead, the world was left with images of those last rehearsals, a glimpse of greatness before the silence. Whitney Houston's Hotel Tragedy. The Bodyguard soundtrack to her national anthem performance at the Super Bowl, she was considered one of the greatest singers of all time. But by 2012, her career had been overshadowed by years of substance abuse and personal struggles. The industry still hoped for a comeback. Instead, her story ended in a Beverly Hills hotel room. On the 11th of February, 2012, Houston was staying at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. She was set to attend Clive Davis's annual pre-Grammy party later that night, a tradition she rarely missed. Guests were already arriving in the building when news broke that something had gone wrong upstairs. At around 3:30 p.m., a member of her staff found Houston unresponsive in the bathtub. Hotel security and paramedics rushed to the room. Attempts at CPR failed, and she was pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m. She was only 48. The coroner's report revealed she drowned, with heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. The combination had likely caused her to lose consciousness in the water. Traces of several prescription medications were also found in her system. The timing of her death made the scene surreal. While emergency crews worked in her suite, music executives, stars, and friends gathered in the same hotel for the Grammy party. Clive Davis chose not to cancel the event, telling guests that Whitney would have wanted the show to go on. The decision sparked debate, but it also underscored how quickly Hollywood moves from tragedy to celebration. Fans around the world reacted with shock. Vigils formed outside the hotel, and radio stations played her greatest hits on repeat. At the Grammy Awards the next night, Jennifer Hudson performed "I Will Always Love You" as a tribute, bringing the audience to tears. In the weeks that followed, Houston's funeral in Newark, New Jersey was broadcast live on television. Celebrities, family, and fans packed the church to say goodbye. Millions watched from home, still stunned by how quickly she was gone. Robin Williams' final days. From Mork and Mindy to Mrs. Doubtfire and Good Will Hunting, his mix of comedy and heart made him unforgettable. To the public, he was a whirlwind of energy and kindness. Behind the curtain, he was battling something no one around him fully understood. In the summer of 2014, Williams was living in Tiburon, California, with his wife, Susan Schneider. He had recently undergone surgery for heart issues and was struggling with insomnia, anxiety, and physical symptoms he couldn't explain. Friends noticed he seemed slower, more withdrawn. He worried he was developing Parkinson's disease, though doctors hadn't confirmed it. On the 11th of August, 2014, the shocking news broke. Robin Williams had taken his own life at age 63. The headlines stunned fans, colleagues, and the entertainment world. For many, it seemed impossible that someone known for spreading laughter could be suffering so deeply. The full picture emerged months later when the autopsy report was released. It revealed that Williams had an advanced case of Lewy body dementia, a progressive neurological disease often misdiagnosed. The condition causes severe anxiety, memory loss, hallucinations, and body stiffness. Doctors who reviewed his case called it one of the worst instances they had ever seen. Susan Schneider later explained that the illness had ravaged her husband's brain in less than a year. She said he knew something was terribly wrong, but no one realized how advanced it was until after his death. The reaction was global. Landmarks lit up in his honor, fans left flowers at his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and social media filled with tributes. Comedians and actors spoke about how generous he had been off stage, mentoring younger performers and visiting sick children in hospitals without cameras around. Carrie Fisher's flight home. She had lived through Hollywood extremes. She became a global icon as Princess Leia in Star Wars, battled addiction in public, and later turned her struggles into sharp, best-selling books. By 2016, she was enjoying a career revival. She had returned to the Star Wars franchise with The Force Awakens and was preparing to continue in the sequels. Fans saw her as tough, witty, and unstoppable. On the 23rd of December 2016, Fisher was flying from London to Los Angeles after finishing work on the TV series Catastrophe. Midway through the 11-hour flight, she went into cardiac distress. Passengers reported seeing crew members and a medical professional on board rushing to help. They performed CPR until the plane landed at LAX. Paramedics met the flight and transported her to UCLA Medical Center. For several days, Fisher remained hospitalized. Fans worldwide followed every update, clinging to hope. On the 27th of December, the news broke. Carrie Fisher had died at 60 years old. The official coroner's report listed cardiac arrest as the immediate cause of death. Toxicology tests found traces of cocaine, heroin, methadone, and ecstasy in her system, along with prescription medications. The report stated it was impossible to determine what role those substances played, but her long history of addiction was well known. Her daughter, Billie Lourd, later said her mother battled addiction her entire life and that she would have wanted her struggles to be acknowledged openly. The timing of her passing made it even harder to process. Just one day later, her mother, legendary actress Debbie Reynolds, suffered a stroke and died at 84. The family lost both women within 48 hours. Tributes poured in from fans, fellow actors, and writers. Mark Hamill called her irreplaceable. Harrison Ford remembered her as one of a kind. Crowds gathered at Star Wars memorial sites with lightsabers held high. Social media filled with photos of Leia, a character who had inspired generations. Chadwick Boseman's private battle. In just a few years, he had gone from portraying Jackie Robinson in 42 and James Brown in Get On Up to leading Marvel's Black Panther, one of the highest-grossing films of all time. To the public, he looked like a rising superstar with a long future ahead. What no one knew was that he was fighting cancer in secret. In 2016, Boseman was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. He chose to keep the diagnosis private, telling only a small circle of family and close friends. While enduring surgeries and rounds of chemotherapy, he continued to film some of the most physically demanding roles of his career. Between treatments, he made Marshall, 21 Bridges, Da 5 Bloods, and Black Panther. On set, crew members later recalled how he would give his all during grueling action scenes, then quietly rest between takes. He never spoke publicly about the pain or exhaustion. Instead, he visited children in hospitals battling cancer, encouraging them to stay strong, all while quietly enduring his own treatments. By 2020, his condition had worsened. On the 28th of August, news broke that Boseman had died at his Los Angeles home, surrounded by family. He was only 43 years old. The announcement stunned fans and colleagues alike. Few had suspected anything, since he had continued working without revealing his illness. The response was immediate and global. Marvel fans lit up social media with the phrase "Wakanda Forever." Leaders, athletes, and fellow actors shared tributes. Former President Barack Obama praised his grace and courage. His death also brought renewed attention to colon cancer, especially in younger adults, where cases have been rising. At the 2021 Academy Awards, he received a posthumous nomination for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a film he completed during his final year. His widow, Taylor Simone Ledward, accepted awards on his behalf, describing him as someone who gave himself over fully, both on stage and in life. Boseman's choice to keep his diagnosis private was his own, but the news left fans around the world stunned. He had played kings, legends, and heroes, all while fighting a battle few ever saw. His life ended far too soon, but the strength he showed in silence made his final years unforgettable. The camera never captured the smell. That was Hollywood's first deception. Clark Gable kissed Vivien Leigh in Gone with the Wind. Millions swooned. What they couldn't see was Leigh holding her breath. Gable's dentures gave him halitosis so severe, co-stars kept their distance between takes. By age 32, he had no natural teeth left. A gum infection called pyorrhea destroyed them all. The studio knew. They paid for the dental surgery in 1933. Gable spent days in the hospital. Then he disappeared to Canada to recover. When he came back, MGM's publicity machine went to work. They sold him as the king of Hollywood. No one mentioned the smell. The dentures weren't modern implants. They were primitive plates, crude plastic and metal. They shifted when he talked, created gaps where food rotted. Bacteria multiplied in those spaces. The smell intensified with each passing year. George Jacobs, who worked closely with the stars, later revealed the extent of the problem. Gable's breath could clear a room, but his box office power meant everyone pretended not to notice. Directors scheduled his kissing scenes first thing in the morning, before the smell built up throughout the day. The leading ladies who couldn't stand their leading men. Sophia Loren worked with Gable in 1960 on It Started in Naples. She requested the director limit their close-up scenes. The Italian actress, known for perfect grooming, couldn't stand being near him. Between takes, she'd step away immediately, always found reasons to maintain distance. One crew member from the Misfits said you could smell Gable from several feet away. The Nevada desert heat made it worse. Sweat mixed with the dental decay created something memorable for all the wrong reasons. Gable refused mouthwash, said it would affect his acting. The irony was his bad breath affected everyone else's acting. Marilyn Monroe was his co-star in The Misfits. She had her own hygiene issues, but even she noticed Gable's breath. Two of Hollywood's biggest stars, both harboring disgusting secrets, trying to create chemistry while fighting revulsion. Ingrid Bergman had her own challenge with Humphrey Bogart. He smoked 3 packs daily. Chesterfields, no filters, drank whiskey constantly. His breath combined cigarettes, alcohol, and dental decay. During Casablanca, Bergman asked director Michael Curtiz to minimize their face-to-face scenes. Their famous final scene at the airport was deliberately staged. Bergman positioned slightly away. The fog helped hide the distance. That restrained goodbye, everyone remembers? Might have been more passionate if she wasn't avoiding his breath. The romantic tension was real, just not the kind audiences imagined. Lauren Bacall was different. She fell in love with Bogart despite the smell, or maybe because she smoked heavily too. Their famous chemistry in To Have and Have Not was authentic. She was one of the few who could tolerate being close to him. "You know how to whistle, don't you? You just put your lips together and blow." She actually did put her lips on his. Most actresses wouldn't. By The African Queen in 1951, Bogart's dental problems had worsened. The difficult shooting conditions in Africa made everything worse. No proper hygiene facilities. Katharine Hepburn, his co-star, later called it aromatic challenges. Director John Huston found it amusing. He smoked and drank as much as Bogart. Thought it was part of the authentic experience. When beauty surgery became dental disaster. Joan Crawford had her own dental disaster. She wanted higher cheekbones. The solution seemed simple. Remove some back teeth. Create those hollow cheeks everyone admired. Marlene Dietrich had done it successfully. Crawford followed. The surgery went catastrophically wrong. Her front teeth started spreading apart. The gaps widened daily. Dentists attempted repair with dental cement, filled the spaces, then filed everything down for caps. The procedure was barbaric by modern standards. No proper anesthesia, just cocaine rubbed on the gums. The pain was constant. Infections followed. Her upper lip swelled permanently from the damage. That pouty look everyone copied, it came from infected gums. The swelling never fully went down. It became part of her trademark appearance. Crawford scrubbed her hands raw, demanded her homes stay spotless, required everyone to remove shoes, sanitize doorknobs obsessively. But her mouth was rotting. The contrast was striking. Perfect exterior hygiene. Internal decay. Makeup artists noticed immediately. They developed special techniques to hide the damage in photos. Specific lighting angles. Heavy lipstick application. Never shot her from below. The camera could expose the swelling. By her 60s, she needed round-the-clock medical care after another dental surgery. The decades of damage had accumulated. When she drank, which became more frequent in her later years, the smell got worse. The alcohol mixed with the chronic infection created something unforgettable. Her adopted children later wrote about the smell, how it contrasted with her obsessive cleanliness in every other area. Multiple makeup artists from MGM confirmed the issue. They'd hold their breath during close-up makeup application. One developed a system of breathing through her mouth while working on Crawford's face. Another kept peppermint oil under her nose, anything to mask the smell emanating from Crawford's mouth. The sex symbol who never bathed. Marilyn Monroe's hygiene was worse than anyone imagined. The ultimate sex symbol rarely bathed. Days would pass without her showering. Clark Gable, despite his own serious breath issues, found her repulsive. He had what biographer David Brett called a fetish for cleanliness. Monroe disgusted him completely. She went days without bathing, never used deodorant, often skipped underwear entirely. Her makeup artist, Alan Whitey Snyder, kept baby wipes in his kit, extra-strength powder, perfume. He'd freshen her between takes during long shooting days. It was the only way to manage the situation. The wardrobe department faced constant challenges. Monroe would return costumes stained with sweat and body oils. She'd wear the same clothes for days straight. The famous white dress from The 7-Year Itch. It required extensive cleaning after each day of shooting. The costume designer kept multiple identical versions. Monroe would soil one, they'd switch to another. During Some Like It Hot, director Billy Wilder noticed the issue immediately. He was known for long shooting days, multiple takes. Monroe's hygiene would deteriorate as the day progressed. By afternoon, crew members would position fans strategically, not for her comfort, to blow the smell away from others. Tony Curtis, her co-star, later said kissing Monroe was like kissing Hitler. People assumed he meant her personality, but insiders knew he was referring to the physical experience. The combination of unwashed body, no deodorant, and heavy perfume attempting to mask everything. During The Misfits, Gable avoided her off-camera completely. The man with terrible breath couldn't stand Monroe's body odor. Two of Hollywood's biggest stars, both hiding disgusting secrets, pretending to have chemistry for the cameras. The crew noticed the distance they maintained between takes, always on opposite sides of the set. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, later noted that Monroe's poor hygiene connected to her mental state. Depression manifested in neglecting basic care. But the studios never addressed the underlying issues. They just managed the symptoms. More powder, more perfume, more baby wipes. The rebels who made filth their brand. James Dean took bad hygiene further. He used it as rebellion, the same clothes for weeks, sporadic bathing at best. Director Nicholas Ray had to intervene during Rebel without a cause. Multiple crew members complained about the smell. It was affecting their work. Dean's red socks became legendary. He wore them for weeks straight, calling them lucky. His leather jacket was never cleaned. He said the grime made it authentic, method acting taken to an extreme. He wanted to smell like a real rebel. He succeeded. His New York apartment had no reliable hot water. That's where the habit started. But when he reached Hollywood and could afford better, he kept the same routine. It became part of his image. The rebel who smelled like one. Studios marketed his rebellion. They just didn't mention the odor. Natalie Wood struggled through their romantic scenes. She maintained professionalism on camera, but crew members saw her visible discomfort during close shots. She'd turn her head slightly, breathe through her mouth, anything to avoid direct exposure to Dean's smell. Director Elia Kazan, who gave Dean his breakthrough in East of Eden, noted the issue in his autobiography. Dean seemed to cultivate an earthy quality that extended to personal habits. Kazan had worked with Brando, was used to actors rejecting Hollywood polish. But Dean took it further. The smell was a statement. Julie Harris, his co-star in East of Eden, was more diplomatic. She focused on his talent, but privately told friends about the challenge of their intimate scenes. Dean would arrive on set wearing the same clothes from the previous day or week. The continuity department loved it. The actors didn't. Marlon Brando's body odor was equally legendary. He refused regular bathing. No deodorant, thought it was artificial, unnecessary. By Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola dealt with creative demands and practical challenges. How to film someone whose smell was overpowering in the Philippine jungle heat. Even during A Streetcar Named Desire, which made him a sex symbol, director Elia Kazan repeatedly asked him to bathe more. Vivien Leigh was disturbed by his odor during their physical scenes. The play required intense physical contact. Leigh suffered through it professionally, but complained privately. That famous Stella scene with the sweat-soaked shirt? The sweat was real. The smell was worse. The torn shirt wasn't just dramatically ripped. It was genuinely dirty. Brando insisted on authenticity. He got it. The crew could smell it from behind the cameras. During The Godfather, makeup artists struggled with his hygiene. Extra time needed before cameras rolled. They'd spray cologne on his costumes, powder his skin heavily. The aging Don character helped hide some issues, but behind scenes, everyone knew. The smell of Brando became part of film set folklore. His Mutiny on the Bounty co-stars had it worse. The tropical setting, the period costumes that couldn't be washed frequently, Brando's natural odor. It created a perfect storm of smell. Trevor Howard, his co-star, later called it the most challenging aspect of the production, and the film was notoriously difficult in every way. The mood swings that showed in hygiene. Elizabeth Taylor's hygiene depended entirely on her emotional state. Happy and in love, she maintained herself perfectly, every detail attended to. Depressed or fighting with Richard Burton, days without proper bathing, heavy perfume attempting to mask the odor. The perfume made it worse, mixed with body odor instead of covering it. During Cleopatra, the most expensive film ever made at that time, Italian crew members noticed immediately. The production was chaotic. Taylor's hygiene reflected the chaos. One makeup artist developed a code. When Taylor needed attention, an assistant would casually mention a hot bath waiting in her trailer. It let her save face while addressing the issue. Joseph Mankiewicz directed her in Cleopatra. He never confronted her directly. The diplomatic bath suggestion system worked. But everyone knew what it meant when that announcement came over the set. "Miss Taylor, your bath is ready." It became a running joke among the crew. In Italian. So Taylor wouldn't understand. The film's lengthy production meant long-term exposure to Taylor's varying hygiene. Good weeks and bad weeks. The continuity department had to track which scenes were shot during her clean periods versus her neglectful periods. Her appearance could change dramatically based on her self-care. During Suddenly, last summer, her habits were better. She was in a good period emotionally, but the pattern was established. Those who worked with Taylor repeatedly knew to check her emotional state. It predicted her hygiene. Happy Taylor smelled like expensive perfume. Sad Taylor smelled like expensive perfume fighting a losing battle. Hollywood's elaborate height conspiracy. The height deceptions were just as elaborate as the hygiene cover-ups. Alan Ladd stood 5'6" at most. Some accounts say 5'4". Paramount Studios built an entire system around hiding it. They dug trenches for taller actors to stand in, called them Ladd trenches. Every department participated. For Shane, his co-stars literally stood in ditches during their scenes together. Director George Stevens had them dug specifically for Jack Palance and Van Heflin. The trenches were measured precisely. Ladd needed to appear just slightly shorter than his co-stars. Not equal, that would seem fake, but not drastically shorter, that would break the illusion. Ladd stood on boxes, hidden platforms. Apple boxes became Ladd boxes on Paramount lots. They had different sizes for different scenes. 1 inch for casual conversation, 3 inches for confrontations, 4 inches for romantic scenes. The prop department kept an inventory specifically for Ladd's films. The studio paired him with Veronica Lake repeatedly. She was 4'11", made him look tall without tricks. 7 films together. The partnership wasn't about chemistry. It was height management. Lake understood the arrangement. She wore flat shoes, never heels, kept her hair down to minimize her vertical line. Cinematographers developed the Ladd angle, low cameras to make him imposing, but not too low. That would distort facial features. They found the perfect balance. About 18 inches below eye level, it added perceived height without obvious distortion. Every cameraman at Paramount learned the Ladd angle, the camera angles named after short stars. James Cagney was 5'5". Warner Brothers developed the Cagney angle for filming. Slightly low camera positions, never obvious, but always there. The angle became standard for all their shorter actors. Even after Cagney, they called it the Cagney angle. They cast shorter actors around him. When tall actors were necessary, Cagney got the stairs, or the platform, or the seated position while others stood. The blocking was choreographed as carefully as dance numbers, every movement planned to maintain height illusion. Cagney bounced around scenes, explosive energy, rapid movements. It distracted from height comparisons. You watched his motion, not his stature. He developed this technique deliberately, studied how attention worked, realized movement drew the eye more than size. The studio listed him at 5'9" in official biographies, 4 inches taller than reality. Press photos were taken from low angles. Group photos positioned him on higher ground, or in the center with others slightly behind, creating forced perspective. Edward G. Robinson was also 5'5". His gangster roles required intimidation. Directors solved it with psychological blocking. Robinson sat behind desks while others stood before him. Power positioning that transcended height. The desk became his throne, his fortress. In confrontations, he invaded taller actors' personal space, moved uncomfortably close, created discomfort. The camera read it as menace. He'd look up at taller actors, but the angle suggested he was looking through them, not at them. Psychological dominance replacing physical dominance. John Huston said, Eddie didn't need to be tall. He had a voice that made him 10 feet high. That voice was deliberately cultivated. Robinson studied vocal projection, learned to speak from his diaphragm. His voice filled spaces his body couldn't. Mickey Rooney was even shorter, just 5'2", but MGM turned it into an asset, at least initially. He played teenagers into his 20s. The Andy Hardy series worked because he looked young. Small, the all-American boy who never grew up. The challenge came with adult roles, 3-inch lifts in his shoes, raised platforms everywhere. For National Velvet, they dug trenches for Elizabeth Taylor, who was still a child but already taller than Rooney. The child actress stood in ditches so the adult actor could appear taller. The million-dollar hairpiece industry. John Wayne started losing his hair in his late 30s, right around Stagecoach in 1939, his breakthrough role. By the early 1950s, he wore hairpieces in nearly every film, but they made them look rough, windblown, fitting for a cowboy, not the perfect Hollywood hair, authentic-looking fake hair. Writing scenes created unique problems. Wind could dislodge the piece. Wayne wore special bandanas under his cowboy hat. They held everything in place during gallops. The costume department built extras into his wardrobe, hidden securities for the hidden hair. In hot weather, Wayne complained constantly. "This damn thing's hotter than a tin roof in August," he reportedly said. But the ladies seemed to like it, so on it stays. He was pragmatic about it. The hairpiece was part of his costume, like the gun belt or the boots. For outdoor shoots in Monument Valley, special measures were required. The desert wind was unpredictable. Wayne's hairpiece was secured with extra adhesive, sometimes spirit gum. Sometimes a new formula developed specifically for desert conditions. The makeup department traveled with multiple identical pieces. If one was damaged, they could switch quickly. Fred Astaire's hairpiece had to survive his dancing, jumps, spins, dancing on the ceiling in Royal Wedding. Max Factor developed special adhesive just for him. It could withstand perspiration and rapid movement. The formula was kept secret. Other stars wanted it. Max Factor charged premium prices. The hairpiece used silk instead of standard lace. Better adhesion, better ventilation. Each piece cost thousands of dollars. Astaire traveled with multiple identical pieces. 6 was the standard. Only select stylists could touch them. They signed confidentiality agreements. In his entire career, despite the athletic dancing, his hairpiece never fell off on camera. Not once. This wasn't luck, it was engineering. The pieces were tested in wind tunnels, subjected to rapid movement tests, sprayed with glycerin to simulate sweat. Only when they passed every test were they approved for filming. Ginger Rogers knew the rule: never run fingers through his hair during romantic scenes. "Fred would never forgive me if I dislodged his little friend," she said. Every actress who worked with Astaire got the same warning: don't touch the hair. Ever. The toupees that cost more than cars. Cary Grant's hairpieces cost 10 times the average. Each hair individually knotted into nearly invisible material. The base was Swiss lace, so fine it was transparent. The hairline was graduated. Not a sharp edge, irregular, like real hair. The pieces took months to make. He traveled with different versions, perfect styling for romantic comedies, slightly messy for action films. Each piece was numbered, catalogued. Grant kept detailed notes on which piece was used for which scene. Continuity was essential. He'd review his notes before each shooting day. As he aged, Grant let the hairpieces gray naturally, maintained credibility. But the pieces themselves were manufactured perfection. "The public pays to see Cary Grant," he said, "not a bald man they don't recognize." He understood the transaction. The audience wanted the illusion. He provided it. Grant's hairpieces were maintained by a specialist who traveled with him. Hair by hair, the pieces were cleaned, styled, repaired. A single hairpiece could last 6 months with proper care. Grant went through 4 to 6 pieces per year. The annual cost exceeded most people's salaries. Frank Sinatra's hairpiece became a Rat Pack joke. Dean Martin made oblique references during shows, called it Sinatra's little helper up top. The audience laughed, not fully understanding. Sammy Davis Jr. said Frank was sensitive with strangers but joked with friends. Once, after a particularly wild night in Vegas, Sinatra sent his hairpiece to Dean in a box. The note said, even it needed the day off to recover. Dean wore it on stage that night. Put it on his microphone stand. Sinatra laughed from the wings. Sinatra had different pieces for different occasions. Performance pieces for stage work. They could withstand sweat and movement. Film pieces for movies. More delicate but more realistic. Casual pieces for daily wear. Less elaborate but comfortable. Spencer Tracy's pieces were subtle. MGM made them slightly thinning, like a real middle-aged man. They gradually made them fuller. So gradual, audiences never noticed. The evolution took years. Carefully managed. Each new piece just slightly different from the last. William Holden's hairpieces grew more obvious as his alcoholism worsened. During The Bridge on the River Kwai, filmed in humid Ceylon, maintaining the piece became a challenge. The heat, the humidity, the alcohol sweating through his pores, it all affected the adhesive. When drugs destroyed more than careers. Elvis Presley's dental hygiene crumbled with his drug use. By the mid-1960s, his teeth were discolored, yellow, brown in places, his breath notorious. Actress Marianne Mobley said kissing him in Girl Happy was far from romantic. She developed a technique: angle her face, create the illusion of contact without actual contact. He'd spend hours perfecting his hair, black dye carefully applied, various waxes and pomades. The pompadour had to be perfect, but forget to brush his teeth, or was too impaired to bother. The contradiction was striking: perfect hair, rotting teeth. By Paradise Hawaiian Style, co-star Susanna Lee developed her own techniques: minimal contact during kissing scenes, quick pulls away between takes, breath mints constantly. She'd offer them to Elvis. He'd refuse, said they affected his singing. The prescription drugs affected his entire system. Dry mouth from the medications accelerated tooth decay. The painkillers meant he didn't feel the cavities developing. By his Vegas years, makeup artists struggled to hide the deterioration. They'd paint his teeth white for photographs, use special lighting to minimize the discoloration. Montgomery Clift maintained himself perfectly until the car accident in 1956. His face was destroyed, reconstructed, chronic pain followed. He self-medicated with alcohol and pills. His hygiene collapsed with his health. By The Misfits in 1961, he arrived on set unwashed, clothes worn for days, the same shirt, the same pants. Makeup artists didn't just cover facial scars. They addressed basic hygiene he'd neglected: dry shampoo for his hair, heavy cologne for the smell. Elizabeth Taylor stayed his friend. She hired assistants during Suddenly last summer. Their unofficial job: ensure he bathed, had clean clothes. She'd visit his trailer, casually mention the shower, leave fresh clothes visible, never directly confronted him, maintained his dignity while managing his decline. The billionaire who wore tissue boxes as shoes. Howard Hughes started as Hollywood's most eligible bachelor, handsome producer, meticulous appearance, changed shirts multiple times daily, insisted on perfect creases in his pants. His shoes were polished to mirrors, hair perfectly styled. The transformation that followed was extreme. By the 1940s, he developed 15-minute hand-washing rituals, new soap each time. The bar couldn't be touched by anyone else, towels touched only at corners. He'd practice picking them up. If he touched the wrong spot, he'd start over. The ritual could take an hour. His fear of germs became pathological, yet it led to the opposite of cleanliness. He'd wear tissue boxes as shoes to avoid floor contact, let his hair grow feet long, nails curled into spirals, refused to bathe for months. The fear of contamination led to actual contamination. He sat naked in hotel, clean zones, areas he declared germ-free, surrounded by jars of his own urine. He was afraid to use bathrooms, thought they were contaminated. The jars accumulated. Hundreds of them. The smell was overwhelming, but Hughes couldn't smell it anymore. His sense of smell had deteriorated. Yet he demanded perfection from women. According to Scotty Bauer's memoir, if a woman had the tiniest blemish, Hughes wouldn't touch her. A single pimple was disqualifying. Extreme filth for himself, unattainable perfection for others. The contradiction defined his madness. His employees developed elaborate systems to manage him. They'd spray areas with disinfectant before he entered, not because the areas were dirty, but so Hughes could smell the chemicals. It calmed him, made him feel safe, even as he lived in squalor. The studio system's greatest cover-up. The studios controlled everything: height, hair, smell, truth. Contracts included specific hygiene clauses, mandatory bathing schedules, required dental visits, hair inspections. Stars who violated these clauses faced suspension, or worse, termination. Publicity departments airbrushed reality, not just photographs, but entire lives. They created fictional biographies, invented romantic histories, covered up marriages, pregnancies, addictions, and especially physical imperfections. They threatened lawsuits against anyone who mentioned the wrong details. Journalists who wrote about Gable's breath never worked in Hollywood again. Photographers who captured Ladd's real height found themselves blacklisted. The machine protected its investments ruthlessly. For Alan Ladd, they dug trenches costing thousands. For Sinatra, they kept multiple hairpieces worth more than houses. For Monroe, they kept industrial supplies of wet wipes and powder. For Gable, they kept everyone at safe distances. Every department participated in the deception. Set designers built false floors with different levels. Actors stood on their marks, literally, measured spots that created perfect height illusions. Costume designers created special shoes, hidden lifts, extended heels, specially tailored pants that created leg length. Makeup artists developed new techniques weekly. How to hide Crawford's swollen lips, how to make Monroe appear clean, how to disguise Gable's denture line, how to paint over Elvis's tooth decay. Each star required specialized knowledge. Cinematographers found perfect angles for everyone. The Cagney angle, the Ladd angle, the Robinson angle. They had handbooks, detailed instructions for filming each star, which side was their good side. Which angle hid which flaw, how to light around dental work. The entire industry participated in mass deception, and it worked. Audiences never knew. The kisses looked passionate even when the actress held her breath. The hero looked tall even standing in a trench. The hair looked perfect even when it wasn't theirs. That was Hollywood's greatest trick. Not special effects, not stunt work, but making deeply flawed humans appear perfect, making the disgusting seem desirable, making the short seem tall, making the bald seem hairy, making the smelly seem appealing. Every star had something hidden. Every image was carefully managed. Every truth was negotiable. The biggest stars had the biggest secrets, and the best help hiding them. In 1921, a young actress named Virginia Rappe died under mysterious circumstances at a party hosted by silent film star Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. This controversy was just the beginning. For over a century, Hollywood has been a breeding ground for disturbing rumors that turned out to be all too real. Today we're pulling back the curtain on Tinseltown's darkest truths. The casting couch, early Hollywood's open secret. The term casting couch emerged in the 1920s, referring to a troubling practice where influential men took advantage of aspiring actors for inappropriate favors in exchange for roles. Louis B. Mayer, co-founder of MGM Studios, was notorious for this behavior. Mayer held private meetings with young actresses, often leading to uncomfortable situations. In 1935, dancer Patricia Douglas attended an MGM party where she was reportedly a victim of misconduct by a studio salesman. Despite filing charges, the case was quickly buried. Joan Crawford, who started her career in the 1920s, spoke about her experiences years later. "I never slept with a man I didn't want to. No one ever made me do anything I didn't want to do." However, her words hinted at the pressures faced by many actresses. Marilyn Monroe once said, "Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul." This quote reflects the industry's moral bankruptcy. In 1937, child star Shirley Temple, then 9 years old, was inappropriately approached by MGM producer Arthur Freed. When she laughed at him, Freed reportedly exposed himself. Temple's mother quickly removed her from the situation. The silent film era saw its share of scandals too. The Fatty Arbuckle case in 1921 shocked the nation when actress Virginia Rappe died after a party at his hotel. Though Arbuckle was eventually acquitted, the incident shed light on Hollywood's darker side. By the 1930s, the Hays Code was introduced to clean up Hollywood's image. However, behind closed doors, the exploitation continued. Judy Garland's studio-enforced diet pills. Her road to stardom was paved with studio control and dangerous health practices. MGM signed Garland at 13 in 1935. From the start, studio head Louis B. Mayer criticized her weight, calling her "my little hunchback." By 1938, during the filming of Love Finds Andy Hardy, 16-year-old Garland was put on a strict diet. Studio doctors prescribed Benzedrine and amphetamine for weight loss and seconal barbiturate to help her sleep. This dangerous cocktail kick-started a lifelong struggle with addiction. Garland's daily meal often consisted of just soup, black coffee, and 80 cigarettes, along with the prescribed pills. During the filming of The Wizard of Oz in 1939, the studio wanted her to lose more weight. She was 17 and weighed 94 pounds. In 1943, while filming Girl Crazy, Garland collapsed on set multiple times due to exhaustion and malnutrition. The studio's response was to give her a brief rest before pushing her back to work. Garland later recalled, "They had us working days and nights on end. They'd give us pills to keep us on our feet long after we were exhausted. Then they'd take us to the studio hospital and knock us out with sleeping pills." By 1947, Garland's health had deteriorated significantly. She attempted to end herself on the set of The Pirate. Despite this, MGM continued to push her, leading to her suspension in 1948 due to erratic behavior caused by addiction. "I was in the studio system for 15 years and I thought they were going to kill me," Garland said in a 1967 interview. She suffered numerous breakdowns and was admitted to sanitariums multiple times throughout her career. The long-term effects of this studio-enforced regimen were devastating. Garland struggled with addiction and health issues for the rest of her life. She died in 1969 at age 47 from an accidental overdose, a tragic end tied directly to the abusive practices she endured in her youth. Alfred Hitchcock's obsession with Tippi Hedren. His obsession with Tippi Hedren during the early 1960s revealed a dark side to the famed director. Hedren, a model-turned-actress, was discovered by Hitchcock in a TV commercial in 1961. He immediately signed her to a 7-year contract. Hedren's first role was in The Birds, 1963. During filming, Hitchcock's behavior became increasingly controlling. He dictated her wardrobe off-set and forbade her from socializing with the cast and crew. Hedren later stated, "Every time I'd be talking with a male member of the cast or crew, my next exchange with Hitchcock would be icy." The most harrowing incident occurred during the filming of the attic scene. Hedren was told mechanical birds would be used. Instead, live birds were thrown at her for 5 days straight. She suffered cuts, exhaustion, and a nervous breakdown. When a bird nearly pecked her eye, she snapped, "I think you got your scene, Mr. Hitchcock." In 1964, during the production of Marnie, Hitchcock's obsession intensified. He had a mask of Hedren's face made for his personal use and installed a secret door between his office and her dressing room. Hedren recounted a disturbing incident in her trailer. "He touched me inappropriately. It was uncomfortable and deeply unsettling. The harder I fought him, the more aggressive he became." After Hedren refused his advances, Hitchcock threatened to ruin her career. True to his word, he kept her under contract for 2 years without work, effectively stalling her career. Hitchcock's behavior wasn't limited to Hedren. Actress Diane Baker, who co-starred in Marnie, observed, "I saw Hitchcock verbally abuse Tippi and I was shocked." In 1966, Hedren finally broke free from her contract with Hitchcock. However, the director's influence in Hollywood made it difficult for her to find work. She later said, "He ruined my career, but he didn't ruin my life." Hedren kept silent about these experiences for decades, only speaking out in detail in her 2016 memoir, Tippi. Her story shed light on the abuse of power that was all too common in Hollywood during that era. Roman Polanski's assault case. On March 10, 1977, film director Roman Polanski, then 43, was arrested in Los Angeles. The charge, drugging and misconduct of a 13-year-old girl, Samantha Gailey, now Geimer. The incident occurred at actor Jack Nicholson's home during a photo shoot for French Vogue. According to court documents, Polanski gave Gailey champagne and part of a Quaalude. He then allegedly continued with inappropriate actions despite her objections. Gailey later testified, "I was mostly just on and off saying, 'No, stop,' but I was afraid." Polanski faced legal charges on multiple counts related to inappropriate conduct, including allegations involving the use of a controlled substance and misconduct with a minor. He initially pleaded not guilty to all charges, but later accepted a plea bargain. On August 8, 1977, Polanski pleaded guilty to unlawful activity with a minor. Per the plea deal, the probation report recommended probation. However, on the day of sentencing, February 1, 1978, Polanski fled to France. He had learned that the judge, Lawrence J. Rittenband, planned to sentence him to prison and subsequent deportation. France refused to extradite Polanski due to its limited extradition treaty with the U.S. Polanski continued his film career in Europe, even winning an Oscar for The Pianist in 2003, which he couldn't collect in person. In 2009, Polanski was arrested in Switzerland at the request of U.S. authorities. He spent 67 days in custody before being released and returning to France. Geimer, the victim, has since stated she forgives Polanski and believes the case should be dropped. In a 2013 interview, she said, "I'm not going to carry a bunch of resentment, and much worse things happen to people." Despite this, attempts to resolve the case have been unsuccessful. In 2017, Polanski's offer to return to the U.S. for time served was rejected by L.A. County Superior Court Judge Scott Gordon. As of 2024, Polanski remains a fugitive from the U.S. justice system. Rob Lowe's tape scandal. In July 1988, 24-year-old actor Rob Lowe became embroiled in a controversy that nearly derailed his career. The incident occurred during the Democratic National Convention in Atlanta, where Lowe was supporting presidential candidate Michael Dukakis. On the night of July 17th, Lowe met two young women at a bar and brought them back to his hotel room. Unbeknownst to Lowe, one of the women, 16-year-old Jan Parsons, was underage. The encounter was videotaped, creating what would become one of Hollywood's first celebrity intimacy tape controversies. The tape surfaced months later when Parsons' mother found it and reported it to the authorities. On February 24, 1989, the story broke in the media, causing immediate shockwaves in Hollywood and beyond. Lowe initially denied any wrongdoing, claiming he didn't know Parsons was underage. He stated, "I didn't ask for ID going into a club. It was Atlanta, the home of Coca-Cola, not the home of underage girls." The controversy had severe consequences for Lowe's career. He was dropped from several film projects and lost numerous endorsement deals. His appearance at the 1989 Academy Awards was met with open hostility from some attendees. Legal ramifications followed. Lowe faced criminal charges for misconduct with a minor and distributing explicit material. To avoid prosecution, he agreed to perform 20 hours of community service in his home state of Ohio. The incident also led to a civil lawsuit from Parsons' family, which was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. As part of the settlement, Lowe was required to publicly apologize. In the years following the scandal, Lowe worked to rebuild his career and reputation. He entered rehab for alcohol addiction in 1990, a move he credits with helping him turn his life around. Woody Allen's relationship with Soon-Yi Previn. In January 1992, Mia Farrow discovered unclothed photos of her adopted daughter, Soon-Yi Previn, in Woody Allen's apartment. Allen, then 56, had been in a relationship with Farrow for 12 years. Soon-Yi was 21 at the time and had been adopted by Farrow and her ex-husband Andre Previn years earlier. The discovery sent shockwaves through Hollywood and the public. Allen confirmed the relationship in August 1992, stating, "I'm thrilled." The admission came amid a bitter custody battle between Allen and Farrow over their 3 children. Allen's film, Husbands and Wives, released in September 1992, became unintentionally controversial due to its plot similarities to the real-life scandal. The film's premiere was marked by protests and media frenzy. In 1993, a judge in the custody case called Allen's behavior with Soon-Yi grossly inappropriate. The court denied Allen visitation rights with his daughter Dylan and limited contact with his son Satchel, now Ronan Farrow. Despite the controversy, Allen and Soon-Yi married in Venice on December 23, 1997. Allen was 62, Soon-Yi 27. The ceremony was small, with only a handful of guests present. In a rare 2015 interview with NPR, Allen addressed the relationship's beginnings. "I was paternal. She responded to someone paternal." This statement further fueled critics who found the relationship's power dynamics disturbing. The scandal significantly impacted Allen's career. Several actors, including Greta Gerwig and Timothée Chalamet, later expressed regret for working with him. Amazon Studios terminated a 4-picture deal with Allen in 2019, citing renewed allegations of misconduct by Dylan Farrow. As of 2024, Allen and Soon-Yi remain married and have 2 adopted daughters. The controversy continues to spark debates about power, consent, and morality in Hollywood relationships. R. Kelly's illegal marriage to Aaliyah. On August 31, 1994, R&B singer R. Kelly, then 27, illegally married his 15-year-old protégée Aaliyah in a secret ceremony in Rosemont, Illinois. The marriage certificate falsely listed Aaliyah's age as 18. Kelly had met Aaliyah 3 years earlier when she was 12. He became her mentor, producer, and lead songwriter for her debut album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, released in May 1994. The album's title now seems disturbingly prophetic. Vibe magazine published a copy of the marriage certificate in December 1994. The revelation sparked immediate controversy. Aaliyah's family was reportedly furious and moved quickly to have the marriage annulled in February 1995. Kelly's former tour manager, Demetrius Smith, later admitted to obtaining a fake ID for Aaliyah. In the 2019 documentary Surviving R. Kelly, Smith stated, "I was in the room when they got married. I'm not proud of that." Both Kelly and Aaliyah initially denied the marriage. In a 1994 interview, Aaliyah said, "I'm not married. That's all there is to it." She maintained this stance until she died in a plane crash in 2001. The illegal marriage came to light again during Kelly's 2019 arrest on federal charges. Prosecutors alleged Kelly bribed a government official in Illinois to create a fake ID for Aaliyah. In 2021, during Kelly's exploitation trial, a witness testified that Kelly married Aaliyah because he believed she was pregnant with his child. The marriage would have protected Kelly from charges. Kelly was ultimately convicted on all 9 counts against him, including racketeering and exploitation. The illegal marriage to Aaliyah was a key part of the prosecution's case. Harvey Weinstein's decades of serious misconduct. On October 5, 2017, the New York Times published an exposé detailing nearly 3 decades of coercion allegations against Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. The article, by Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey, cited interviews with numerous women in the film industry. Among the first accusers were actress Ashley Judd and former Weinstein employee Laura Madden. Judd recounted a 1997 incident where Weinstein invited her to his hotel room and asked for a massage. Madden described similar experiences in the early 1990s. The article revealed that Weinstein had reached at least 8 settlements with women who accused him of unwanted physical contact and advances. These settlements, dating back to 1990, were often accompanied by non-disclosure agreements. 5 days after the Times article, The New Yorker published Ronan Farrow's investigation, which included 13 more women's accounts of alleged abuse by Weinstein. 3 women accused Weinstein of SA. Actress Rose McGowan, who had alluded to her experience for years, publicly accused Weinstein of serious misconduct on October 12, 2017. She stated she was paid $100,000 in 1997 to sign a non-disclosure agreement. By October 31st, over 80 women had come forward with allegations against Weinstein. The list included high-profile actresses like Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie, and Salma Hayek. Weinstein was dismissed from the Weinstein Company on October 8, 2017. He was later arrested and charged in New York on May 25, 2018, for serious misconduct. On February 24, 2020, Weinstein was found guilty of 2 serious offenses and sentenced to 23 years in prison. Bill Cosby's serial assaults. For decades, Bill Cosby was known as America's dad, beloved for his role on The Cosby Show. However, beneath this wholesome image lurked a serial predator whose crimes spanned half a century. The first public accusation against Cosby came in 2005 when Andrea Constand filed a lawsuit alleging he drugged and acted inappropriately toward her in 2004. During the case, 13 other women came forward with similar stories. The suit was settled out of court in 2006 for $338 million. Despite these allegations, Cosby's career continued largely unaffected until October 16, 2014. During a stand-up performance in Philadelphia, comedian Hannibal Buress seriously referred to Cosby, rekindling public interest in the allegations against him. In the following months, dozens of women came forward with stories of coercion dating back to the 1960s. Many described a similar pattern. Cosby would offer them drinks, which were allegedly drugged, and then essay them while they were incapacitated. On December 30, 2015, Cosby was arrested and charged with 3 counts of aggravated indecent moves against Andrea Constand. This was the first criminal case against Cosby, as most other allegations fell outside the statute of limitations. Cosby's first trial in 2017 ended in a mistrial due to a hung jury. However, in a retrial on April 26, 2018, Cosby was found guilty on all 3 counts. On September 25, 2018, he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in state prison. During the trial, 5 other women testified about their experiences with Cosby, establishing a pattern of behavior. One of these women, Janice Dickinson, testified that Cosby coerced her in 1982 after giving her a pill. Cosby's conviction was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court on June 30, 2021, due to a violation of his due process rights. He was released from prison the same day, having served nearly 3 years. Kevin Spacey's predatory behavior. On October 29, 2017, actor Anthony Rapp alleged that Kevin Spacey made a misappropriate advance toward him in 1986, when Rapp was 14 and Spacey was 26. This accusation, published in a BuzzFeed article, marked the beginning of Spacey's downfall. Spacey responded on Twitter, claiming no memory of the incident, but offering an apology. In the same statement, he came out as gay, a move widely criticized as an attempt to deflect from the allegations. Following Rapp's accusation, numerous other men came forward with similar stories. On November 1, 2017, actor Roberto Cavazos alleged that Spacey groped him in the mid-2000s at the Old Vic Theatre in London, where Spacey was artistic director from 2004 to 2015. The Old Vic conducted an internal investigation revealing 20 personal testimonies of alleged inappropriate behavior by Spacey between 1995 and 2013. Many of these incidents occurred on the theater's premises. On November 3, 2017, Netflix cut all ties with Spacey, halting production on House of Cards and shelving his film Gore. Ridley Scott reshot Spacey's scenes in All the Money in the World, replacing him with Christopher Plummer just weeks before the film's release. In 2018, Spacey was charged with indecent conduct in Nantucket, Massachusetts, for allegedly groping an 18-year-old man in 2016. The case was later dropped when the accuser invoked his Fifth Amendment rights during a hearing about his missing phone. In May 2022, Spacey was charged with 4 counts of SA against 3 men in the UK, dating back to incidents between 2005 and 2013. In July 2023, Spacey was found not guilty of these charges in a UK court. Despite the court verdict, Spacey's career has been irreparably damaged. His last major film role was in 2018's Billionaire Boys Club, which earned only $618 on its opening day. Forget bad acting. That's easy to forgive. What these actors did behind closed doors, that's where the real horror stories live. And somehow, they still got standing ovations. Laurence Olivier's on-set bullying. He was already one of the biggest names in British acting when he signed on to direct and star in The Prince and the Showgirl, 1957. His co-star? Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's biggest export at the time. What should have been a dream pairing turned into a toxic disaster. Olivier made it clear from day one that he didn't respect Monroe. He mocked her acting style, called her unprofessional, and told crew members she was just a body, not an actress. According to accounts from the set, he hated her method acting process and refused to accommodate her needs. Monroe often struggled with anxiety and relied on her acting coach, Paula Strasberg, for support. Olivier banned Strasberg from the set and then mocked Monroe for falling apart. Tensions got so bad that Monroe would cry between takes. Crew members said Olivier humiliated her in front of others, rolling his eyes and whispering insults during her scenes. Colin Clarke, an assistant on set, later wrote in his memoir that Olivier purposely made things harder for Monroe, knowing it would throw her off. He reportedly told one crew member, "All she has to do is be sexy. Why is that so difficult?" Olivier didn't hide his contempt. In interviews, he called her impossible and blamed her for production delays, even though Monroe was dealing with health issues and pressure from both studios. Her husband, Arthur Miller, who visited the set, later said Monroe was emotionally bullied by Olivier from start to finish. After filming ended, Monroe refused to ever work with him again. Olivier, for his part, wrote later that directing her was like trying to teach a pig to sing. That quote stuck, and not in a good way. There were no public consequences, but the stories survived, and they paint a very different picture of the so-called legend. Jerry Lewis's co-star harassment. He made his name as a comic genius, but behind the scenes, he was a nightmare for many of the women who worked with him. Several former colleagues have since spoken out, describing a long pattern of inappropriate behavior, emotional abuse, and control. In the 1950s, actress Karen Sharp was cast opposite Lewis in The Disorderly Orderly. She later said Lewis invited her to his office and made an inappropriate move that left her feeling cornered and unsafe. When she rejected him, he told her she'd never work again and followed through. She never did another major film. In her words, "He was abusive and cruel. If you said no, you were done." Hope Holliday, who worked with Lewis in The Ladies' Man, told a similar story. She said he cornered her in a dressing room and forced himself on her. She escaped, but the fear stuck with her for decades. She didn't speak publicly until after his death. These weren't isolated stories. In the 1960s and 70s, Lewis kept a tight grip on his sets, especially around female cast members. He would limit their screen time, speak down to them, and brag that he alone decided who stayed and who got cut. He often used sexual threats as leverage. Lewis also had a reputation for humiliating his co-stars. On more than one set, he would make actresses read lines in front of the full crew while he interrupted with vulgar jokes. If they didn't laugh, he'd replace them. One assistant recalled him saying, "If she can't take a joke, she can't be in my picture." Many of these stories didn't come out until after Lewis died in 2017. But once the curtain lifted, the pattern was hard to ignore. Decades of silence, intimidation, and quiet blacklisting, all hidden behind a goofy smile and slapstick gags. Rex Harrison's cruel cast behavior. He built his career playing charming, upper-class men. In real life, he was known for being cold, rude, and often cruel, especially to those who couldn't fight back. Directors, co-stars, and crew described him as arrogant, condescending, and openly hostile to anyone he didn't respect. In the 1950s, his behavior drew serious concern when actress Carol Landis passed away shortly after their relationship reportedly ended. Harrison was married at the time. Landis rumoredly left a note, which vanished before police arrived. Harrison was the last person to see her alive. While he wasn't charged, his studio rushed to bury the story. Landis's family and friends believed he pushed her aside after promising her a future. His next big scandal came during the Broadway run of My Fair Lady. Julie Andrews, who played Eliza Doolittle, kept things professional, but insiders said Harrison treated her like a servant. He demanded the spotlight, refused to rehearse with understudies, and insisted on top billing even when Andrews started stealing the show. Stagehands said he often refused to speak to her between scenes and mocked her singing voice. On film sets, Harrison's temper was just as nasty. During Dr. Dolittle, 1967, he regularly exploded at crew members and demanded constant rewrites to suit his mood. He got into shouting matches with the director and made racist remarks about extras hired for background scenes. The production went over budget largely because of his delays and demands. Despite his reputation, Harrison kept getting major roles. Studios looked the other way because he delivered strong performances. But to the people behind the scenes, he was a constant source of fear and stress. He won an Oscar. He got a knighthood. But off-screen, the people who worked with him knew the truth. Rex Harrison made life on set miserable for anyone who wasn't Rex Harrison. Walter Matthau's mean-spirited conduct. He had the face of a grump and the timing of a pro. On screen, he was lovable, curmudgeonly, and always good for a laugh. Off-screen, not so charming. Behind the scenes, Matthau was known for being loud, insulting, and often downright mean. Crew members from his early films said Matthau had no patience for people he considered beneath him. He swore constantly, belittled production assistants, and made extras cry more than once. Matthau also had a habit of insulting people in front of crowds. He'd mock wardrobe choices, mimic voices, and call out mistakes during live takes. It wasn't playful teasing, it was meant to embarrass. One stand-in said, "You learned fast or you got humiliated." That was the rule. He treated some co-stars with respect, but not all. If he didn't like someone, he'd make sure the whole set knew it. During Plaza Suite, insiders claimed he locked himself in his trailer for hours just to avoid a cast member he didn't get along with. Filming reportedly stopped until he decided to come out. No one dared challenge him. Even directors weren't safe. Matthau would argue about scripts, change lines on the spot, and storm off if he didn't like a scene. He once walked out in the middle of a rehearsal and told the director, "You don't know what the hell you're doing." None of this ever made the press. Studios kept it quiet because Matthau delivered hits, and fans only saw the grumpy charm he perfected on screen. The yelling, the insults, the tantrums, they stayed behind the camera. But ask anyone who worked on his sets for more than a week, and you'll hear the same thing. Walter Matthau wasn't acting like a jerk in his roles. He was just being himself. Dustin Hoffman's harassment era. For years, he was one of Hollywood's most respected actors. But in 2017, his name showed up in headlines for something else. Multiple women came forward with detailed accounts of harassment that dated back to the 1980s. The most widely reported story came from Anna Graham Hunter. She was just 17 when she interned on the set of the 1985 television adaptation of Death of a Salesman. In her account, Hoffman repeatedly made inappropriate comments, asked intrusive personal questions, and touched her in ways that crossed clear boundaries. She said she laughed it off at the time because she was scared and didn't know what else to do. "He was openly disrespectful," she wrote. "He did things you don't expect from a man twice your age and a star." Other women came forward with similar stories. Writer Wendy Riss said Hoffman propositioned her during a pitch meeting in the early 90s. When she declined, the meeting ended abruptly. A third woman, Catherine Rossiter, said Hoffman crossed physical boundaries with her regularly during their Broadway run of Death of a Salesman in 1983. She later said the trauma left her with years of anxiety. Hoffman responded to some of the allegations with vague statements, saying he respected women and didn't recall acting inappropriately. In other cases, he issued flat denials. But the number of women and the similarities in their stories made it hard to ignore. Before these reports, Hoffman had a clean public image. Serious actor, Oscar winner, family man. But the 2017 reckoning pulled back the curtain. The stories weren't anonymous. The women had names, faces, and nothing to gain by speaking out. He never faced formal charges, but his legacy now carries a stain. And for many of the people he worked with behind closed doors, that reputation was never spotless to begin with. Chevy Chase's racist, violent set behavior. By 2012, he was already a known headache in the industry. But things hit a new low on the set of Community. What started as minor tension turned into a full-blown disaster, with racism, violence, and offensive jokes all playing a part. It wasn't just one bad day. Chase regularly clashed with the show's creator, Dan Harmon, and took his frustration out on castmates. According to Donald Glover, who played Troy, Chase often made racist remarks between takes. One comment implied that Glover only got laughs because of his race. Glover didn't respond. He later said, "I saw it as Chevy trying to get under my skin, but I just wasn't having it." Joel McHale, who played the lead on the show, had his own issues with Chase. In an interview years later, McHale revealed that Chase injured him during a scene, pushing him too hard in a physical gag. He laughed it off at the time, but behind the scenes, the tension kept growing. Chase refused to rehearse, complained constantly, and walked off set when he didn't like the script. The worst came when Chase reportedly used a racial slur during a heated argument about his character's dialogue. Writers and producers were stunned. Chase later apologized, claiming he was trying to make a point about offensive writing. But no one was buying it. That incident marked the beginning of the end. Eventually, Harmon was fired after clashing with NBC leadership. Chase stayed on for another season but left before filming wrapped. The energy on set never fully recovered. Cast and crew said the atmosphere was toxic, largely because of Chase's behavior. This wasn't new. Long before Community, Chase had been called out for bullying and ego problems on Saturday Night Live, where he once slapped a fellow cast member backstage. But Community made the pattern undeniable and public. He didn't face any formal consequences. No lawsuits, no fines. But the damage was done. The charm had worn off. What was once seen as sharp wit started to look more like plain cruelty. And no one was laughing anymore. James Woods' underage allegations. He always had a sharp tongue and a long list of enemies. But in 2017, things turned serious. Actress Amber Tamblyn publicly accused him of trying to pick her up when she was just 16 years old. Tamblyn said she and a friend, also underage, were at a restaurant when Woods invited them to Las Vegas. When they mentioned their age, he allegedly said, "Even better." Tamblyn posted the story on Twitter after Woods mocked a gay coming-of-age film for featuring teen characters. She followed up with an open letter. "You were 60. I was 16. You knew better." Woods denied everything. He called the story a lie and claimed he'd never even met Tamblyn, but she stood by her account and said she had witnesses. Several other actresses chimed in, backing her tone even if not that specific story. The accusation struck a nerve because Woods had a long record of creepy behavior toward young women. Back in the early 2000s, Woods had a relationship with Ashley Madison, a woman 40 years younger than him. She was reportedly just 19 when they started dating. Years later, he was seen on red carpets with even younger dates, drawing raised eyebrows but little pushback from the industry at the time. Online, Woods didn't help his case. He became known for posting hateful, sometimes threatening tweets. In 2017, he tweeted an image attacking a gender non-conforming child and their parents. When called out, he doubled down. The backlash was fierce, but he refused to apologize. For years, he had been considered one of Hollywood's more intelligent, if difficult, actors. But his public behavior grew more aggressive, more political, and more disturbing as time went on. Studios started backing away. By the end of the 2010s, Woods wasn't just disliked, he was avoided. No formal charges were ever filed, but his name became shorthand for an aging actor who used fame as a shield for predatory behavior. And unlike his movies, real life didn't come with a script rewrite. The damage was done, and people were finally paying attention. Jared Leto's disturbing gifts. In 2016, Jared Leto's method acting crossed the line from committed to uncomfortable. While filming Suicide Squad, he stayed in character as the Joker, not just on camera, but off. What he did in the name of immersion left several cast and crew members disturbed. According to multiple co-stars, Leto sent out bizarre gifts to help everyone get into the mindset of a chaotic villain. These included adult items, strange props, and even a live rat reportedly delivered to Margot Robbie. Viola Davis confirmed that a pig carcass was sent to the cast during a rehearsal. Actor Adam Beach later said the crew was genuinely unsettled. During early interviews, Leto leaned into the reputation, saying he wanted to create an intense dynamic. But after the public started raising concerns, he changed his tune. He claimed many of the stories had been exaggerated and said it was all part of getting into character. Mostly fun and games, he called it. The people on set didn't seem to agree. It got to the point where Warner Brothers reportedly asked him to scale things back. Some cast members said they avoided interacting with him during production. What was meant to build tension for the role turned into real stress behind the scenes. This wasn't the only time Leto made headlines for off-screen behavior. Around the same period, complaints over workplace treatment were reportedly filed. And on social media, questions surfaced about his interactions with young fans, though no formal action was ever taken. In the end, Leto's version of the Joker barely appeared in the film, less than 10 minutes of screen time. But the off-camera stories stuck. Most of the cast has since spoken about it in cautious terms, some jokingly, others not at all. Leto says it was all in service of the role. But for the people on the receiving end, it didn't feel like performance. It felt personal, and not in a good way. For many involved, the most unsettling part of the experience had nothing to do with what ended up on screen. Gérard Depardieu's assault conviction. He was once one of France's most celebrated actors. By 2025, he was a convicted offender. His fall wasn't sudden. It followed years of accusations that had been ignored, buried, or brushed off. That changed when two women spoke up about what happened on a film set in 2021. The production was Les Volets Verts. According to court documents, Depardieu was accused of touching two women, a set decorator and an assistant director, during filming. The women reported that he touched them without consent during routine interactions. Their complaints led to a formal investigation. At trial, more than 20 women came forward with similar stories. Some dated back decades. They described a pattern. Depardieu would use his fame to cross boundaries, often in professional settings. The court focused on the two most recent cases, both of which were backed by witness statements and internal reports from the set. In May 2025, Depardieu was found guilty. He received an 18-month suspended sentence, was fined, and added to France's National Registry of Offenders. The ruling was historic. It was one of the few times a major European film star faced legal consequences for this kind of behavior. The verdict sparked a national conversation in France. Depardieu had long been seen as untouchable. He starred in over 200 films and was a cultural icon. Presidents praised him. He held dual citizenship. Even when allegations surfaced in earlier years, they were dismissed as tabloid gossip. But the tide shifted. The testimonies were consistent. The stories lined up. And the excuses wore thin. During the trial, Depardieu denied wrongdoing and showed little remorse. His legal team argued that he was being targeted for his fame. The court didn't agree. Since the conviction, several film festivals quietly removed his name from promotions. Some projects were shelved. His defenders grew quiet. The industry that once protected him finally took a step back. He hasn't apologized. He hasn't stepped away. But for the first time in his career, the consequences caught up to him, and the public stopped pretending they didn't know. Steven Seagal's serial accusations. He built his brand as the tough guy who never lost a fight. But for decades, women behind the scenes told a very different story. Starting in the early 1990s, a steady stream of accusations followed him from co-stars, assistants, and women who auditioned for him in private. In 1991, actress Rayanne Malone said she was invited to Seagal's office to read for a role. Instead, she claimed he made inappropriate advances and locked the door behind her. Another woman, Christine Keeve, told a similar story from the same period. Both women said the studio discouraged them from speaking out. That same year, Warner Brothers reportedly paid a six-figure settlement to resolve another complaint involving Seagal's behavior during casting. Details were never made public, but the incident was widely reported at the time and quietly buried. In 1996, Jenny McCarthy said she showed up for an audition and was asked to undress, even though the scene didn't call for it. She refused. He told her she'd never work for him again. Years later, Juliana Margulies said Seagal brought a weapon to a hotel room during a late-night script meeting. She left immediately. The pattern didn't stop. In 2018, Portia de Rossi came forward with her own story. During an audition, She said Seagal unzipped his pants mid-meeting. Her agent later told her not to worry. He does that to everyone. By 2020, more than a dozen women had shared similar experiences. Some described unwanted touching. Others said he used his role as producer or lead actor to lure them into uncomfortable situations. Still, Seagal denied all wrongdoing and avoided legal action in the United States. He later moved to Russia, accepted citizenship, and became close to President Vladimir Putin. Since then, he's appeared less in Hollywood and more in foreign state media. Critics called it an escape from accountability. Seagal hasn't faced criminal charges, but the sheer volume of consistent, detailed stories makes it hard to dismiss. For years, he played the unbeatable action hero on screen. But off-screen, the damage he left behind caught up to his legacy, even if not the law. Everyone loves to blame cancel culture, but some of these people should have been canceled a long time ago. You weren't overreacting. You were underinformed. Here are 10 disgusting celebrities the industry helped you fall for. Sean Diddy Combs' legal battles. He was once the king of hip-hop. Big hits, flashy lifestyle, and a massive fan base. But behind the fame, a string of serious accusations. In 2017, his personal chef said he harassed her and then fired her when she spoke up. They settled the case in 2019, no details shared. Fast forward to 2023. His ex-girlfriend Cassie filed a lawsuit claiming years of abuse. She said he hurt her, trafficked her, and even blew up Kid Cudi's car. That case also settled fast. Then came the bombshell. In May 2024, CNN dropped a hotel video from 2016. It showed Diddy grabbing and attacking Cassie. You could hear the internet gasp. Diddy responded with an apology, calling his actions inexcusable. But it didn't stop there. By September 2024, he was arrested on serious federal charges, including trafficking-related offenses, organized criminal activity, and unlawful transportation. He said he wasn't guilty and stayed locked up in Brooklyn, no bail. A month later, things exploded. Reports said over 100 people, men, women, even kids, were getting ready to file lawsuits against him. The number? Around 120. Some were underage. It was chaos. In March 2025, another charge dropped, forced labor. He was accused of making people work crazy hours using fear and pressure. Again, he said he was innocent. James Franco's hidden history. He always had a certain charm. He played weird, artsy characters, joked around in interviews, and came off as the cool, harmless guy. But behind that laid-back image was a mess the public didn't see until 2018. That year, 5 women accused him of misconduct. 2 were former students at his acting school, Studio 4, which he ran in Los Angeles and New York. They said Franco used his power to push young actresses into uncomfortable and explicit scenes. Some claimed he removed safety guards during nude scenes and blurred the line between acting and manipulation. Franco denied everything. He told Stephen Colbert on The Late Show that the claims were not accurate. But the internet wasn't convinced, and his silence on social media didn't help. By 2019, 2 women filed a lawsuit. They accused him of exploiting students under the pretense of education. According to court documents, students were led to believe they had a shot at roles in Franco's films if they agreed to intense scenes. Many said they felt pressured, especially in his so-called master class. In 2021, Franco settled the lawsuit for $2.2 million. He didn't admit guilt, but he did later speak out. On a podcast, he said he had struggled with compulsive behavior and acknowledged having inappropriate relationships with students. He called it wrong, but claimed it wasn't illegal. One of the most telling signs came from Seth Rogen. He and Franco were longtime collaborators, but in interviews, Rogen confirmed he hadn't worked with Franco in years and didn't plan to again. No shade, just a clean break. Since then, Franco's disappeared from the spotlight. He's taken on small indie projects, but nothing major. Most of Hollywood has kept its distance. Noel Clarke's collapse. In the UK, he was everywhere. He acted, directed, produced, and even won a BAFTA for Outstanding British Contribution to Cinema in 2021. But the celebration didn't last. Just weeks after that award, The Guardian published a massive investigation, and everything changed. 20 women came forward. They accused Clarke of inappropriate conduct, unwanted physical contact, intimidation, and demeaning language. Some said he secretly recorded audition scenes that involved sensitive content. Others claimed he'd touched them without consent or made cruel comments during shoots. Most of these women had worked with him professionally, on set, in casting, or through his company, Unstoppable Entertainment. Clarke denied everything. He said he never broke the law and never acted inappropriately. But the accusations weren't vague. They came with names, dates, and detailed stories. The Guardian stood by the reporting, and BAFTA quickly suspended his award. ITV pulled the final episode of Viewpoint, his latest drama, right before it aired. Sky, who had long worked with him, cut ties immediately. What followed was a total shutdown of Clarke's career. Projects vanished. Offers dried up. His name, once linked to representation and success, became toxic in the industry. In April 2025, Clarke tried to fight back. He sued The Guardian for defamation. He said the article ruined his life and claimed the accusations were false and unfair. But the journalist, Lucy Osborne, testified that every story was vetted and the piece was never personal. She said it was about giving people a voice. The court hasn't ruled yet, but the damage is done. Clarke hasn't booked a major role in years. His production company stopped operating. Even with the lawsuit, there's been no public comeback, no press tour, no support from the film world. What started as a career on fire crashed hard. And the worst part? It took 20 women stepping forward for anyone to actually listen. Morgan Wallen's never-ending apologies. He went from country music's rising star to public controversy machine, and it started long before most fans noticed. In May 2020, he was arrested in Nashville outside a bar. Charges: public intoxication and disorderly conduct. Nothing career-ending, but not a good look. Months later, he blew his shot at Saturday Night Live after video surfaced of him partying maskless during COVID restrictions. The show canceled his appearance just days before airtime. Then came February 2021. TMZ released home security footage showing Wallen yelling a racial slur after a night out. The backlash was immediate. Radio stations dropped him. His label suspended his contract. The Academy of Country Music barred him from that year's awards. He apologized publicly and promised to do better, but the damage was real. Despite the fallout, Wallen's album sales actually spiked. Some fans claimed cancel culture had gone too far. Others saw it differently, a clear example of someone being rewarded for bad behavior. Either way, Wallen stayed mostly quiet, reappearing months later in interviews saying he'd been doing a lot of soul-searching. But things got weird again. In October 2023, he was seen storming off stage mid-concert without explanation, and in April 2025, SNL brought him back, but not for long. He exited the building hours before the show, leaving producers scrambling. No official reason was given. Social media lit up with fan theories and jokes, but NBC stayed silent. Behind the scenes, sources claim Wallen has become difficult to work with. Others say he just isn't interested in the spotlight anymore. Either way, the pattern keeps repeating. Do something reckless, apologize, go quiet, then resurface like nothing happened. R. Kelly's crimes in plain sight. He was once untouchable. He ruled the charts, sold out arenas, and had megastars lining up to work with him. But behind the fame, a long, disturbing trail that the industry ignored for years. The first red flag? In 1994, Kelly, then 27, secretly married 15-year-old Aaliyah. Her age was faked on the marriage certificate. The union was annulled, but questions started swirling. In 2002, a video allegedly showing Kelly with an underage girl surfaced. He was charged with possessing illegal material involving a minor but pleaded not guilty. The trial dragged on for years, and in 2008 he was acquitted. That same year, he released more music. Business as usual. In 2017, things exploded again. BuzzFeed published a report accusing Kelly of running a cult, controlling young women and cutting them off from their families. His team denied it. But former associates started speaking out. They described rules, punishments, and disturbing levels of control. In 2019, the docuseries Surviving R. Kelly aired on Lifetime. It featured survivors, parents, and former employees detailing years of abuse. The reaction was massive. Protests broke out. Artists pulled collaborations. Radio stations dropped his music. Finally, people started listening. That same year, Kelly was arrested on multiple federal charges, including organized criminal activity and trafficking-related offenses. The details were chilling: coercion, intimidation, underage victims, and years of cover-ups. In 2021, he was convicted on all counts in New York. In 2022, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. A separate Chicago trial in 2023 led to another 20-year sentence, 19 of which would be served at the same time. He's locked up for decades. Chris Brown's pattern of violence. His reputation never fully recovered after 2009, and that's because the problems didn't stop there. In February 2009, photos leaked of Rihanna's injuries after Brown assaulted her the night before the Grammys. The images were everywhere. Public opinion turned fast. Brown was arrested and later pled guilty to felony assault. He got probation, community labor, and court-ordered anger management. You'd think that would be rock bottom. It wasn't. In 2011, he allegedly smashed a window at Good Morning America after being asked about the Rihanna incident. The glass shattered near the street, but no charges were filed. His team blamed the media. He blamed haters. Then came the nightclub fights, parking lot scuffles, and assault allegations, year after year. In 2013, he punched a man outside a D.C. hotel. He was arrested and spent time in jail after being kicked out of rehab for anger issues. In 2016, a woman accused him of threatening her with a gun at his home. Police arrived with helicopters and a search warrant. Brown live-streamed part of it on Instagram. No charges were filed, but the spectacle was a media circus. That same year, his former girlfriend Karrueche Tran got a restraining order against him. She said he threatened to kill her. A judge later granted a 5-year order of protection. Then, in 2022, a woman filed a $20 million lawsuit alleging that Brown engaged in inappropriate conduct after giving her an unknown substance aboard a yacht. His team denied everything, and the case was later dropped, but the headlines kept piling up. One ongoing case involves fans claiming they were assaulted during a concert. Another woman says she was injured by Brown's security team outside a venue. Kevin Spacey's House of Cards collapsed fast. His fall was one of the fastest in Hollywood history. One moment he was the face of prestige drama. The next, completely erased from screens. It all started in October 2017. Actor Anthony Rapp told BuzzFeed News that Spacey made a move on him at a party when Rapp was just 14. Spacey's response? He said he didn't remember but apologized if it happened. Then he came out as gay in the same statement. That move drew backlash for trying to deflect with sexuality. What followed was a flood. More than 30 people came forward, crew members, actors, even journalists. They described similar patterns: unwanted touching, inappropriate comments, and abuse of power on set. Netflix cut ties instantly. House of Cards killed off his character and rewrote the entire final season. In 2018, he was charged in Massachusetts for allegedly groping an 18-year-old at a bar. The case fell apart when the accuser stopped cooperating, but the damage was done. He became uncastable. That same year, Spacey released a strange YouTube video in character as Frank Underwood. He looked straight into the camera, blurring fact and fiction, and said, "You wouldn't believe the worst without evidence, would you?" Fans called it creepy. Everyone else called it unhinged. In 2022, he went on trial in the UK, facing multiple allegations of inappropriate physical conduct. Several men accused him of unwanted advances going back years. In 2023, he was found not guilty, but the trial revealed a long pattern of questionable behavior behind closed doors. By 2025, Spacey's name is rarely mentioned in Hollywood. No new projects, no cameos, no redemption arc. Harvey Weinstein's power and silence. He was Hollywood's ultimate power broker. If you wanted an Oscar, you probably worked with him. He ran Miramax, produced critical hits like Pulp Fiction and Shakespeare in Love, and made or broke careers. For decades, his power went unchecked, and people stayed silent. That all ended in October 2017. The New York Times published a detailed article accusing Weinstein was accused of long-term misconduct and quietly settling complaints over the years. Within days, The New Yorker followed with its own expose, including on-record accounts of coercive behavior and serious violations. Soon, over 80 women came forward. Actresses, assistants, models, interns. Big names like Gwyneth Paltrow, Salma Hayek, and Lupita Nyong'o added their voices. Many said he lured them to hotel rooms under the guise of meetings, then assaulted or harassed them. Weinstein denied most of it but was fired from the Weinstein Company almost immediately. The Academy expelled him. BAFTA suspended his membership. The Screen Actors Guild removed him. Hollywood, which once protected him, now ran for cover. The details were horrifying. NDAs were used to buy silence. Assistants were allegedly made to help set up his meetings. For years, his behavior was whispered about but never challenged, until it couldn't be ignored. In 2020, a jury in New York convicted Weinstein on charges related to forcible misconduct and non-consensual acts. He was sentenced to 23 years in prison. In 2022, Los Angeles charged him again. That trial led to another conviction in 2023, adding 16 more years. He'll be over 90 before he's eligible for release, if he lives that long. Weinstein's fall also triggered something bigger. The number sign Me Too movement exploded into mainstream culture. Other powerful men, directors, executives, actors, were suddenly held accountable. He wasn't just a man who abused power. He was the system, protected by it, enabled by it, and finally undone by the voices that refused to stay quiet. He built an empire on silence, fear, and control. But in the end, he couldn't silence everyone. D. Koch's secret double life. In Singapore, D. Koch was a household name. He built a loyal audience on YouTube, worked as a popular radio DJ, and made brand deals left and right. His content was funny, sharp, and made to feel personal. That's what made the 2020 allegations so shocking. In August of that year, multiple young men came forward online. They accused D. Koch of sending inappropriate messages, engaging in manipulative behavior, and offering money in exchange for explicit interactions. Screenshots and voice messages quickly spread across social media. Several of the accusers were underage at the time of contact. At first, D. Koch denied the claims. He said the messages were fake or taken out of context. But then more proof appeared. Long message threads, audio recordings, and consistent patterns. The evidence was overwhelming. His radio station, Power 98, suspended him. Sponsors disappeared. His social media presence went silent. In 2021, authorities formally charged him with the exploitation of a minor and the production of obscene films. In court, it came out that he had stored explicit videos on his phone. He had arranged to meet teenage boys and pressured them online. These weren't just allegations anymore, they were facts backed by a criminal investigation. In August 2022, D. Koch pled guilty.
He received 32 weeks in jail. During sentencing, the judge said he abused his position of influence and acted with clear intent. After his release, he didn't return to content creation. No apologies, no comeback video, just total silence. What makes his story so disturbing is how carefully he built his image. He marketed himself as trustworthy, even progressive, someone young fans could relate to. Meanwhile, behind the screen, he was using that trust to manipulate people too scared to speak up. Mr. Beast's image under fire. He was seen as the internet's good guy. Mr. Beast, aka Jimmy Donaldson, gave away houses, paid for surgeries, and helped thousands of people. His videos felt positive, clean, and drama-free. But in late 2024, things changed. A group of contestants from his big reality show Beast Games filed a lawsuit. They said the filming conditions were rough and the work environment felt toxic. Some claimed crew members were rude, and others said they didn't feel safe on set. Mr. Beast wasn't accused directly, but the lawsuit named his company and Amazon. An investigation followed. By November 2024, the results were public. No proof was found that Mr. Beast knew about any serious misconduct. But the report confirmed there were problems. Some staff had crossed the line. A few people were fired. Mr. Beast's team added new rules, set up a hotline, and brought in better managers. Fans had mixed reactions. Some said he couldn't control everything. Others thought he should have responded more clearly. Then people online started digging. They pointed out how some friends in older videos had quietly disappeared. Some remembered challenges that seemed too intense. A few clips, once funny, now felt awkward. Mr. Beast stayed quiet. No big post, no full statement. Just a quick mention that he was working on things behind the scenes. He kept uploading. Views stayed high. But something felt different. Comments got sharper. Viewers asked more questions. The shine wasn't gone, but it wasn't untouchable anymore. For years, Mr. Beast built a name on trust, kindness, and massive giving. That's why this hit harder. It wasn't one huge scandal. It was the shift in how people saw him. He's still huge, still respected, but fans are watching more closely now. And when your whole brand is about doing the right thing, people expect you to handle the tough stuff the same way.